This is Caroline Castillo and Micaela Selly with the Houston Metropolitan Research Center on November 14th, 2013, interviewing Mr. Benny Martinez.
Thank you very much for being here. Our ancestors came here in 1731 from the Canary Islands on my maternal side of the family. On my paternal side, they came here in 1750, and we've been here ever since. My grandfather, Manuel Becerra, received a land grant back in 1832 for almost 10,000 acres. The land grant was 2 leagues of land, and of course he kept that for several years until about 1879, when land grabbers came and killed 3 of my ancestors and stole their land. Now, my grandmother at that time was 8 years old, and my grandmother lived to be almost 90 years old. She told us about what happened. She saw the killing of one of her ancestors, which was terrible for an 8-year-old girl. And so that's what happened to our land grant that was taken away from us. There was a lot of reasons why LULAC was organized. Because of the discrimination was going on, the killing of Mexicans by land grabbers, and the Texas ranchers did their part. That's one of the reasons that LULAC was organized. And in 1932, LULAC was organized here in Goliad, and my father was a charter member. There were about 30 members altogether who joined LULAC here. This was only 3 years after the #1 council was organized in Corpus Christi, which was in 1929. Now, in 1932, Mexican Americans in Goliad were segregated. They had what was known as Mexican schools, and the only as far as they could go in the school was the 7th grade, and then that was it. They couldn't go any farther. They weren't allowed to go to high school. And so as soon as Council 21 was organized, the first thing they did, they went before the school board and talked to the school board about allowing Mexicanos to go to high school. And it didn't do much good, so they called Council number 2 in San Antonio to come here and help them get permission for our young people to go to school, to go to high school. So after much to do, the school board here and the one in Austin, or Texas Education Agency, decided to go ahead and let Mexican Americans go to high school. And so a young man who was brilliant, his name was William Carabajal, he was a 7th grader. He had finished with honors. And so his teacher told him, "Willie, it's a shame that as smart as you are, you can't go to high school." So after all this argument that LULAC put up, they finally decided to let William Carabajal go to high school. And so he started high school, but they wouldn't let him in. They closed the door on him, and he had to sit on the steps of the high school for 3 days. They finally opened the door and they let him go in. And when William was a senior, he was a football star. So that was the first time that Goliad won all district in football. William finished with honors. Back then they graduated from the 11th grade, because they didn't have 12th grade. So he broke the ice here, and he was the first Mexican Americans to graduate. Now, a few months ago, we did a historical marker for William Carabajal, and I say we, I said LULAC, and so we put it in front of the high school so everybody can read and know what's going on. Now, in 1940, when I started school 80 years ago, we were segregated. We were still segregated, and our school didn't have a name. It was just called Mexican school, and 25% of the children failed the 1st grade because we couldn't speak English. That was the main problem, the language barrier. 45% of the children dropped out of the 4th grade, and only 1 out of 12 graduated. The main problem was the language barrier and the fact that our curriculum wasn't compatible to what we needed. It wasn't. And so we were having a hard time, most of the children dropped out of dropped out of school. I guess they needed cotton pickers, and that's what we were doing, going to pick cotton. Now, I always ask myself, why didn't those intellectuals in Austin, why didn't they fix the problem that we had? They knew that we weren't making the grade. They knew that we were dropping out. Why didn't they fix it? Apparently they didn't care. And I read, not too long ago, I was reading a book that my son-in-law gave me about 5 years ago, and I read that in 1918, the state of Texas passed a law making it illegal to speak Spanish in school. Now, that was such a dumb law for them to pass. That made it even worse. And I always said they could have had bilingual teachers, or maybe bilingual teachers' aides to help us, to tell us that dos y dos son cuatro, but they didn't. They knew we needed help. They didn't help us. And so that's one of the problems we were having. Now, in 1932, LULAC filed a lawsuit in Del Rio to desegregate schools. And so at the case, when they were hearing it, Price Daniel, who at the time was the Attorney General for the state of Texas, he said, well, they're not segregated because of race, they're segregated because of the language barrier, because the inability of the Mexican-American children to speak English would be detrimental to the English-speaking children. And so that wasn't true, though. That wasn't true. I know because when I taught sixth grade, I made a case study of my own because I had children that couldn't speak English, but they were very smart children. They learned English like overnight, no time at all. So what was done there wasn't fair to us at all. In 1938, we lived on a ranch here in Goliad, and my daddy was president of LULAC, Council 21. And so the ranch owner told us we had to abandon the ranch. And I've been trying to figure out all these years, why did they tell my daddy to abandon the ranch? Well, the depression was on. Everything was so hard back then. And so we had to move out of the ranch. I don't know, but I thought the fact that they told him to move out because my daddy was president of LULAC. And to be a LULAC member back then was dangerous. It was dangerous. A lot of the Mexican Americans refused to join LULAC because they were afraid they were going to get fired. And a lot of them did. And so a lot of them didn't join LULAC because jobs were scarce back then. The depression was on, and it was scarce. Of course, in 19... Okay, so one of the superintendents in, I believe it was Corpus Christi, made a statement that he wanted to keep Mexicans on their knees picking cotton. And the attitude that the teacher had towards us were detrimental to our learning. They told us that, some of them told us that we were dumb, we couldn't learn. As a matter of fact, what happened back then was a lot of the students that were going to school way back then developed an inferiority complex. We thought, bueno, venimos de cabeza dura, we come from hard-headed people, we can't learn. And I remember that when I started college, when I started University in Houston, one of my older brothers told me that. He said, we come from hard-headed people, we can't learn. And that's not true. Everybody has a brain, everybody can learn. All you have to do is apply yourself. And so this is one thing that was really hurting us when they used to tell us that we couldn't learn. A superintendent, not a superintendent, but one of the principals here in Goliad told a teacher, when she started teaching back in 1937, told her, don't waste too much time on Mexican children. They're not going to learn anything. Told her just like that. And you see that they had a negative attitude about us learning. And so that was very, very bad to have. You develop an inferiority complex when they tell you things like that. I have quite a bit of pictures here. Right here is a picture that I have here. I don't know if you can pick this up or not, but this is a school where some children are sitting down and they got a sign on the blackboard that says, speak English. And they had a club that was called the 3S Club, Stop Speaking Spanish. And they would tell us, don't speak that ugly language. So that's one of the things we're going. Of course, I said that we were segregated, and here's a picture of Mexican school when we were segregated. This was taken in 1942. Okay. So that's some of the problems that we had. The other thing that I want to say that, of course, in 1940, one of the writers in Wharton, who was a columnist, and he worked for the Wharton Spectator, he wrote in his column, LULAC has just had a district meeting in Wharton, and so he wrote, I want to congratulate Mayor Robinson for being uncooperative with those who are trying to eradicate discrimination, meaning LULAC, because LULAC has just had a meeting there. And he wrote, I would prefer to associate with garbage collected from the street than to have a Mexican be my equal. Now, why so much hate? I asked myself many times, why? Why so much hate? I mean, even their dogs didn't like us. But I don't know, I asked myself that question. After they stole our land and killed our ancestors, some of our ancestors, and then all that hate that they had for us, I can't understand that. War broke out in 1942. And of course, that put an end to the Depression when the war came. I had 4 brothers in World War II, 4 of us. And thank God they all came home safe. But after the war, we thought that things were going to be better, but they still weren't. Because an incident happened in Richmond, and it was a Congressional Medal of Honor recipient. His name was Macario Garcia. Macario Garcia had won the most distinguished medal that they can be awarded to a veteran or a soldier in the United States, or probably to anybody for that matter. And so when he went into the restaurant to eat, they threw him out. They told him, we don't serve Mexicans. And he was in uniform. In uniform, my God. And so this created a big scandal. It got a lot of attention in the newspapers. So LULAC right away in Houston, LULAC Council 60 started raising money for him. And I understand that they raised quite a bit of money. But later on, the owner of the restaurant dropped the charges against him. And so they gave him the money. And I think that that helped him because he was trying to buy a new house in Houston. Now, when they asked the owner, why didn't you serve him? He was a soldier, a veteran. He said, well, because I don't have the kind of food they eat. Now, how did he know Macario wasn't going to ask for a hamburger? How? He didn't know. We're bicultural. And then, or I don't have the music they like to play. Now, how did he know Macario wasn't going to play Glenn Miller, Tommy Dorsey, or something like that? He didn't know. And that was a dumb excuse to give. And he expects us to believe that? My God, come on. And that's one incident that happened. Another incident that happened was in Three Rivers to a veteran who was killed in the last days of the war in Luzon, in the Philippine Islands. His name was Felix Longoria. When they sent his body home, his wife and his mother went to the mortician there in Three Rivers and asked him for a funeral for his son who was killed in the army overseas. And the funeral home director said, I can't do that because he's going to offend my white clientele. So he refused to give him a burial service. A veteran, an American killed in the war, and refused him to give him a burial service. So right away they called Dr. Garcia in Corpus. Dr. Garcia called Lyndon Johnson, who was the junior senator from Texas at the time. And they flew him to Arlington in Washington, where they buried the national heroes. So they gave him a national heroes burial. And a newspaper in Detroit, and this got national attention because that was a horrible thing for them to do. And the newspaper in Detroit said, Texas, for what you did to Mr. Longoria, you should feel smaller than Rhode Island. Rhode Island is the smallest state in the United States. The first time I heard about this, I had tears in my eyes. I don't see how they could do such a cruel thing. But that's just some of the things that was going on in here in Texas, and perhaps all over the Southwest for that matter. Now, in 1953, I joined LULAC there in Houston because my father had been a member for many years, and my brother Roy was also active in LULAC. In 1950, LULAC had been trying ever since the end of the war to get Mexican Americans admitted to the Houston Police Department. I mean, they wouldn't admit them, or to the fire department. They wouldn't admit them in 1950, and they had been trying ever since the end of the war. And so they took my brother Roy, and I went with him. I was at that time, I think, about 16 years old. We went before the city fathers to talk to him, and Alfred Hernandez, who was one of the best national presidents we had, the Honorable Alfred Hernandez, was a spokesperson for LULAC. There was about 4 or 5 of us that went. And when we went before the city council, Mr. Hernandez asked the mayor, Mr. Mayor, do you know which group of Americans were awarded the most medals of honor during World War II? And the mayor said, no, I don't. And Mr. Hernandez told him Mexican Americans. And you say they don't qualify to be policemen, Mr. Mayor? You say that? And then they said, he told Roy, stand up, let's see how tall you are. Roy was 6'3½". And we're white complected, that was a plus. If you were white complected, it was a plus. If you were dark, it was a minus. So Roy stood up, and Mr. Hernandez asked the mayor, Mr. Mayor, can you tell me what's wrong with this man? And Roy was a student at the University of Houston at the time, a decorated World War II veteran. He had all the qualifications that he needed. And can you tell me what you see wrong with him? Why don't you admit him? So they admitted him, and Roy broke the ice down there, broke the racial barrier. Roy became the first Mexican American to join the Houston Police Department. That is uniform policeman and academy policemen, because they had policemen that were Mexican Americans, but not academy. Now, the ones that went to the academy, they had some of them that they called $1 a year man. They used to give them a badge to put on, and but this was different. This is somebody who attended. Now, my other brother Eli was the first Mexican American. The following day, he went and joined the fire department, and they admitted him. Now, this is a picture of Roy. And this is a picture of Eli, who joined the fire department. And they both served for more than 30 years. When the Korean War broke out, I wanted to join the Army real bad, because one of my brothers, Eli, was 16 when he joined in 1944 during World War II. He was 16 years old, and they wouldn't admit you unless you were 17. So I went and got in line. The war had just broken out. Of course, I didn't have any sense back then, much. And anyway, at 5 o'clock, they gave me the application that I needed, and they told me you have to get your parents to sign it because you're just 16. So I went, and the next day, I went to my father where he was working, and I told him, Daddy, I want to go in the Army. I want to go defend my country. And so he said, no, you're too young. You're too young. You got to stay in school. But Daddy, I want to go, Daddy. And my daddy wouldn't sign it, so I started crying. And so his superintendent came by and asked my father how come I was crying. And my father told me he wants to go in the Army. And so he told my daddy, let him go, let him go. Well, I guess it wasn't he that was going to get shot. So my daddy signed the papers for me. And so I went home, and I told my mother, Mama, I want to go in the Army, and I want you to sign these papers for me, because they won't admit me because I'm 16. And my mother told me I was crazy. She said, you're going to get killed. I'm not going to sign it for you. And so I started crying, and she started crying too, but she didn't sign it for me. So I didn't get to go like I wanted to. And so later on I did go. I went to Korea later on. And so, but anyway, that's what happened then. And later on in 53, I joined LULAC because I wanted to play baseball. They had a baseball team. I love baseball. I played until I was about 44 years old. And so that's why I joined LULAC. I didn't know at the time I was making a total commitment, and which I did. In 1951, a incident happened in Atlanta, Texas, that went all the way to the Supreme Court. A man by the name of Pete Hernandez got into an argument with another individual called Jose Espinosa. And Jose Espinosa cursed at him. But Pete was crippled, and he called him Chueco Cabron. And so Pete went home and got his gun and came and shot Espinosa and killed him. So when the trial was held for Peter Hernandez, they had no Mexicans on the jury, no Mexicans, and they had never used any Mexicans on the jury, Mexican Americans, and so he came to LULAC and asked LULAC for help, and at that time John J. Herrera was one of the lawyers, Carlos Cadena was another one, and Gus Garcia, a brilliant lawyer. Who they call him the silver tongue because he was an excellent speaker, and so they filed for an appeal, and the appeal went all the way to the Supreme Court. And I remember that I was just a young man. I was just getting involved in LULAC, and I remember that they were collecting money because it took a lot of money to take this case to the Supreme Court, and I know that LULACs all over contributed money to take this court to the Supreme Court, and. So it did go to the Supreme Court, and in 1954, sometimes in January, they went before the Supreme Court justices. And Earl Warren was the Chief Justice at the time. And Mr. Gus Garcia did the presentation. And like I say, he was such an eloquent speaker that he spoke. I think they give you about 15 minutes to do your presentation. And when his time was up, a red light goes on, and they tell you, that's it, your time's up. But the red light went on, but the Supreme Court was so impressed with what he was saying, and they told him, "Will you continue?" Because they were impressed with what he was saying. And so Mr. Garcia continued speaking. And so the Supreme Court ruled that you must have Mexican Americans on juries. So what they had done to Mr. Hernandez was unfair, and that was one of the rulings. Shortly after that, the Supreme Court of Plessy versus Ferguson came to the Supreme Court also, where the blacks filed a lawsuit in Plessy versus Ferguson in Nebraska, and it went to court, and Earl Warren presided over that too. He delivered the opinion of the court. And he said that to keep black children segregated would be detrimental, and that it would cause an inferiority complex. So it was then when he ordered all black schools to be integrated. And of course, that followed a big turmoil in all the southern states. It had a lot of problem with that. Of course, our transition of going from Mexican segregated school to white Anglo school was different. It wasn't that much of a problem, but it did create a lot of problem with the black people. But anyway, they got there where they wanted to be. Now that was what happened in 1954. In 1955, Mr. Felix Tejerina was elected national president, and I went to that convention in El Paso in 1955. That was the first convention I ever went to, and so he was elected president. And so as soon as he was elected president, he decided the problem that we were having in school was elementary children not being able to pass the first grade and dropping out of school. That was because we needed bilingual teachers. That's what it was decided. So LULAC Council 60 in Houston decided that they were going to start a little school. They call it the Little School of the 400, because the words that they were going to teach preschool children were 400 basic words. And so they got a young girl in Ganado, Texas, right here, to teach about 40 preschool children, Mexican-American children who couldn't speak English, to teach them the 400 basic words. So the little girl that was a teacher was a 11th grade student by the name of Isabel Berber. And she started school in 1957, around May or June. And for the 3 months that they were getting ready for school, she taught the 40 children basic words in English. And so that year that those children went to first grade, all of them passed but one. So it was very, very productive. So what LULAC decided to do was to open up some more schools. So they opened up some more in Corpus, in San Antonio, and the different towns. The next year they opened up 9 schools. And Mr. Tejerina, who's a very wealthy, very generous man, decided that he was going to pay for it out of his pocket, and he was. And there was a lot of work that we needed to do, so we were doing a lot of work in that project. And so this went on until 1959, when LULAC took this before the state of Texas legislators to approve the state of Texas taking it over. As the state of Texas did, they took it over. They call it pre-instructional classes. But they made it for everybody, not only Mexican-American children, but for a lot of children who couldn't speak English. So and it went very well until 1964, when Lyndon Johnson took over. And so it became Head Start. But that's where Head Start came from, and a lot of people don't know that. But the Little School of the 400, that was the model for Head Start. And so that's one of the biggest projects that LULAC has ever done, is creating Head Start, because that's helped millions of children achieve their education. And I believe that the most noble thing anybody can do is educate a child, because he's going to become more productive, he's going to live a better life, and he's going to be a better American. And that's one thing that we did back in the 50s. Let me back up a little bit. After I came out of the Army in 1958, I was fixing to marry my teenage sweetheart, who I thought was the most beautiful girl in the whole world. As soon as I came back, she was waiting for me. She wrote me every day when I was in Korea. Of course, I always expected to get a Dear John letter from her, but I didn't. And that's one thing I was scared of. And so I knew we're going to get married, man. You need a job. And so right away, I went to Rainbow Bread. I saw an article in the paper where they were asking for truck drivers to deliver bread to different stores. And so I put on a nice summer suit that I had there and shined my shoes, and I even gave myself a good shave. And I have a crew cut back then, because back then they were real popular, back in the 50s, crew cuts. And so I made myself as much impressive as I could, and I was well qualified. And so I went, but I was told by some people they're not going to hire you, Benny, because they don't hire Mexicans. And I said, well, maybe if they see that I make a good impression, and I'm well qualified. I knew the city real well. Because when I was a boy in my 15 or 16, I used to deliver telegrams on a bicycle, so I knew the city. And so when I got there and I went and I told them, I'm here to answer your ad that you need Brent Rouchman, and I need a job. And he said, well, we're real busy right now. I'll come back tomorrow. So I said, okay. I went, come back tomorrow. I went back. And they told me the same thing. And I said, well, I know they're fooling with me now. And then I went back the third time. And the third time they told me, well, we just don't hire your kind. And that really hurt my feelings. That hurt me very, very deeply. But I had a plan B for them. I was ready for them. And I said to myself yesterday when I took my uniform off, I was an American. And today, I'm a Mexican. How could that be? So I told them, we're not going to eat your kind of bread. I'll guarantee you. I'm going to boycott you. LULAC's going to boycott you. All the veterans are going to boycott you. I'm going to tell them, you refuse to give a Korean veteran a job. And everybody I know, all of my family are not going to eat your bread. We're going to eat tortillas that are a lot better anyway. Or either rainbow bread. Well, we're not going to, or either, not rainbow bread, but Mrs. Fair's bread. But we're not going to eat your rainbow bread. And so I remember that because that hurt my feelings so much. I was really hurt. I remember when I came out of the office and I was walking down the sidewalk, I saw all these rainbow bread trucks on the parking lot. And I told myself, I wish I had brought a few hand grenades from Korea with me. I probably would have done it. I'd probably still be in the penitentiary. But I'm glad I didn't anyway. But that's what happened to me. Later on, I got a better job anyway. So, you know. But that's one thing that happened. I joined, went back to my Council 60 and started working. I have been working for scholarships for more than 60 years now. I don't think that there's anything more noble we can do than to award scholarships. And we've been very, very active in that, in doing that. In 1955, we decided that we needed a courthouse because we used to have our meetings at the courthouse. LULAC did, and so we bought a nice house, an old two-story house. That was, a matter of fact, built in 1909. I know that because I read the papers on it, and we started remodeling it as soon as we bought it in January. We started working on it, and we work on it on Saturdays and Sundays. At the same time, we were working on a ball field. We had a ball field that Mr. Morales, the radio station owner, loaned us a few acres, and we built a ballpark with bleachers and everything on it because we used to have ball games every Sunday. We used to sell barbecue, and we charged $1. We charged a quarter for a car to come in. And might have had 5 or 6 people in the car, but we charged a quarter. So we did that for quite a few years. But anyway, we started working on our clubhouse. We worked on it the whole year in 1955. And then in that same year, in December, we had open house. We had a lot of people there. The house was beautiful. We did a beautiful job on it. And the members were all working real diligently. We had over 100 members in Council 22 back then. Now, back in the 40s, we didn't have a women's council. Or to begin with, we didn't have a women's council because of LULAC. Because LULAC believed that our Mexican-American ideology that women belong at home, being mothers and being housewives. But in 1932, the first women's council was organized in Alice, Texas. And then in the same year, the second women's council was organized here in Goliad. And my grandmother, her name was Paula Lozano Martinez. She became the president of the Women's Council. So my family had been involved in LULAC for many, many years. But we did finish our clubhouse, and we had a big open house. A lot of people were there, including the mayor, and many dignitaries were there. And another thing that we did, that I remember, that we worked on single-member districts because we didn't have single-member districts, not that I know of. And so in 1973, we created District 6 in Houston. And so they appointed 3 JPs and 1 constable. The 1 constable was my brother, Roy Martinez, who had been a policeman for many, many years. He was a sergeant already. And he became the first constable there in Houston Precinct 6. Now, Judge Armando Rodriguez, the JP, and Richard Rada also as JP. And so we were very honored to get these people in office because we hadn't had anything like that. As a matter of fact, I remember that several of us ran for election judges back in the 60s. And we elected our first elected official, state representative, Lauro Cruz. And I remember that all the time because when I got my first award from LULAC, which was in 1976, Lauro Cruz presented it to me at the Rice Hotel. We were having a function there, and he gave me my first award. It was called the Desawala Award. And so that's some of the things we were doing then at that time, working on single member district. Now, MELDAP had just been formed. MELDAP is an organization of lawyers that was created by LULAC in San Antonio. And they were having this hearing in Gonzales, Texas, that to create single member districts. And the lawyer from LDAP told us that during the trial, a lawyer for the plaintiffs told the judge, the reason they don't want single member district in Gonzales is because of what happened at the Alamo. Now, what in the hell do we have to do with what happened at the Alamo? We weren't there 150 years ago or whatever. We weren't there. But they took advantage on us for what happened. Not only there, but here too, in Goliad. And so finally, they did create single-member districts. And of course, that helped us to elect some of Mexican Americans because, you know, a lot of us tend to be cohesive. We stick together. A lot of us, you know, we live in the same barrio. And so that's something that we were doing back in the 80s. Another thing that we were doing that whenever they needed a movie star to play the part of a Mexican, they didn't use us. They used Anglos. And of course, we complained about that. Why weren't they using Mexican Americans, you know, to play the part of a Mexican American? And one of those movies, I know it was called the Appaloosa. I think that was Appaloosa. And they didn't use Mexican Americans. A lot of them. And so that's one complaint we had. And there's something else that happened during the 50s that I think is very important to us. Here in Bastrop, a little girl by the name of Minerva Delgado had to walk a far distance to go to Mexican school. And this was in 1948 because of the segregated schools. She couldn't go to the Anglo school that was nearby. So LULAC filed on her behalf. And the same lawyers that did the Peter Hernandez case, John G. Herrera, Carlos Cadena, Gus Garcia, and Judge Deanda. And so it went before the state Supreme Court on appeal. And Judge Ben Rice, I believe that's correct, was the Supreme Court justice who delivered the opinion of the court. He said, no, you can't do that. You can't segregate it because it's a violation of the 14th Amendment under the equal protection of the law. It's a violation. So I said, you're going to have to integrate. So that was in 48. So by 1950, Mexican American schools no longer existed. Now, prior to this, in 1945, in California, the Mendez case over there, the same thing happened. They filed, with LULAC help, and Judge Earl Warren, I think. No, it wasn't Earl Warren. I can't think of the name of the judge. Anyway, the Supreme Court in California said you have to integrate because you're in violation of the 14th Amendment. Now, the Chinese did the same thing. The Chinese also filed a lawsuit. And he went to the Supreme Court, and because of the language barrier. That was the problem, the language barrier. So the Supreme Court, this is what the Supreme Court said, and the defendants for the school. The lawyer for the school said, well, why don't the parents teach them how to speak English before they come to school? Why don't the parents teach them? And so the judge said, how can they when they don't know themselves? How can they? In the first place, they go to school to learn, so you teach them. So they had to get bilingual teachers to teach them how to speak Chinese. And you see how the Supreme Court justice was right. They go to learn, and you're supposed to teach them. and so that's what happened. So that's one thing that happened, and so I thought that was so important. Cases that were so important that LULAC fought for. And I want to say something else about LULAC right now. That LULAC has never thrown rocks or Molotov cocktails or burned cars or fight with the police out in the street. Never. Started a riot? Never. Never. All our demonstrations have been peaceable. And all the cases that we fought have been in the court. Legal. In the court. In a peaceful manner. And that's one thing that I'm very, very proud of. This is a picture of Roy when he first joined the police department. Roy at the time was 26 years old. He served as constable for many, many years. There's a picture of my brother Eli too, when he was in the fire department for about 40 years. And so in 1996, I have done a lot of work through those 90s. I was involved in everything, raising money for scholarship. I even won a contest, Raphael we call it. They picked an individual to run for Raphael once a year, and the individual who raised the most money for scholarships, well, he gets crowned Raphael. Doesn't mean that you're failed. Like one lady called us one day because we asked her husband to run for Raphael. He went home and told his wife that he was going to run for Raphael, and his wife called us. Mi esposo no es feo. My husband is not ugly. I said, ma'am, it's just a title, doesn't mean he's ugly. But anyway, I won that in the 90s. Sometimes can't forget. I won the Raphael contest, and so I remember that we had a big celebration over that. But all the monies were for scholarship, and everything that LULAC has ever done. Golf tournaments, dances, raffles, barbecues, everything. And it's all for scholarships, all for scholarships. And so in 1996, I was nominated for Man of the Year. And so I won it in Houston. And then they went to the state, and I won at the state. And then the meeting, the state national convention was in Boston, Massachusetts. I wanted to go real bad. I thought I had a chance of winning it, but I didn't think I was going to win. And so I was elected the LULAC National Man of the Year in 1996. And there's a plaque up there that they gave me. And I felt very, very honored that they awarded me with that. I think that most of that belonged to the members who were working with me, because they did a lot of work. They did an awful lot of work. We had some people who have been very dedicated to making this a better place for people to live in, to get along, to be peaceful. Because, like I said, we had many problems. And so in the year 2000, and I was teaching at the time. My last few years, I taught at Crockett Elementary. I taught 6th grade, and I really liked that. I love children, and that's what I did the last few years. And I was also working as a realtor for Carlos Garcia Realty. I was selling real estate. Besides my job that I had for Harris County, I worked for Harris County for 35 years. But I decided I was going to move to my hometown of Goliad, and so I came here and I built this house that I got here. I worked every day on it until I finished it. It took me 10 months. I told my wife it was going to take me a year, but it took 10 months. Every day, de sol a sol, from sunup to sundown, I work every day. And I didn't even go to church that one year, but I used to say my prayers, because I talk to God every day, in the morning and at night. I pray for all the people. And so I finished, and the second year I joined LULAC Council 21, the old council that my father was president. And as soon as I joined, they elected me president. And so I served as president. There were some problems going on here. There were some problems going on with the school. I got a lot of complaints from the people that there were some problems going on. One of the things was that Mexican Americans who were applying for jobs teaching school, even though they had the teaching certificate, they weren't being hired. And so I wrote a letter to the school board, and I got 4 members to go with me. We went to the school board, and I talked to them. I told them what they were doing was out of compliance, because you need to hire more Mexican Americans. You don't have enough. You have very few, and the ones that are applying, you're not hiring them. So you're doing this wrong. And the Equal Opportunity Commission will not accept that. You're out of compliance. And so you need to hire. And so I guess I got the message across pretty good. Because today, we have more, and even our superintendent is a Mexican American. And the irony of this, that the superintendent today was turned down back there because they told him he wasn't qualified. And listen to this. The reason they gave, that they told 3 of them that they didn't qualify because they were overqualified. Now, I mean, how stupid is that? That's like telling somebody you're no good because you're too good. I mean, what is that? You're overqualified. That's what we want to hire. Oh my God, come on. Anyway, they started hiring more. And today, thank God, we have more. There was a problem going on with the city also. And I went and complained that what they were doing was wrong. And so I was at this meeting at the city council, and so the mayor asked the attorney, was I right in my complaint? Was complaint right? Excuse me. And so the attorney told the mayor that I was right, and the city council was doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. So they got embarrassed. And the county, I went before the county. By this time, I was beginning a bad reputation with some of these people that don't like us. There's a few of them. Excuse me. I went before the county and I told them also. Well, not long after that, subsequent to that, I got a message that they were coming over to my house and giving me 3 days to get out of town. You got 3 days to get out of town. And I told them, well, I don't need 3 days. I don't need 3 days. If you want to come, you can come today. But don't bother my wife. My wife doesn't have anything to do with this. Come today if you want to. I'm ready. I'm ready for you. But you be ready for me because I'm ready for you. I don't know. They didn't come. I guess they figured I was a little crazy, so they didn't come. And so I was glad they didn't, because my wife was real scared and she was crying. And I told her to go to Houston. Don't worry about me. I'll be all right. When the Minuteman was being organized, I had a meeting with them because they were supposed to meet with Mexican American leaders here in Goliad. And so I went to the meeting, and I was the only one there, the only Mexican American. I met with them. And I told them, I said, if you're going to go around beating up on illegal immigrants, you're against it. What you're doing is wrong. You're doing this wrong. And I will file a lawsuit on it. And so that's something that happened here. But eventually I guess they quit, because I haven't heard any more from them. But that's one thing that was going on. And they had the main office was right here. The main office for the state secretary right here in Goliad. Because they said because of what happened here at La Bahia. La Bahia is a little community about a mile from here. It's called La Bahia. That's where Santana had about 385 Americans executed. They were Americans. They weren't Texans, the way you hear in the movies, Texans. They weren't Texans. They had just gotten here from the United States. They came here. They came here for the purpose of taking Texas away from Mexico. That's where they came here. And they did. They said annex. How do you annex property that belongs to somebody else? You don't annex it. You steal it. And so of course, that was tragic. What happened to those guys? You know, I wouldn't have executed them if I'd have been there. I'd have told them, look, you come on over and join my army, and I'll give you property, because they were fighting for acres. They were supposed to get each soldier that came here from the United States was supposed to get 1,600 acres, and I told them I'll give you 2,000 acres, because what the Mexican government was doing at that time, they were awarding land grants, big parcels of land. They were awarding grants, and no taxes to pay for 10 years. They weren't paying taxes. And even after the 10 years were over, they weren't paying it because they will never have paid them before. Why should we pay them now? Not only that, but back then in that period, they had slaves to pick their cotton, because cotton was the backbone of the economy here in Texas, or in the South for that matter. But anyway, that's the reason they said that they started it right here, because of what happened here at Goliad. And believe me that we paid for it. They took out vengeance on us, and we didn't have nothing to do with what Santana did here when he executed all those prisoners. We weren't here. And anyway, that's something that happened. And you know, I always, every time I have file a complaint, I always use diplomacy, because we know that we can catch more bees with honey than we can with vinegar. I always sit down in a nice, friendly, calm manner, and I talk to many people. I talk to sheriffs, I talk to mayors, school superintendent, and I always use diplomacy. We had an incident that happened in Warden. This happened it was 02, I believe, 04, where this drunk driver hit two little girls. He killed one of them, and he crippled the other one. And he hit and run. You don't do that, not even to an animal. I hit a dog the other day, and I stopped to see the poor animal was okay. Thank God he was okay. But he didn't even stop. And he went to court, and the judge gave him 3 years probation. That's a shame. That is a dirty shame. Here's a picture of the little girl. That's the picture. Her name is Angela Nino. That's her picture. I thought that, and I was so damn mad. And we went down there and had a demonstration. We had about maybe 100 people marching. And I invited my old buddy, Johnny Mata, to come and join us. Johnny came from Houston. And some more people. My granddaughters were marching with us, my daughters. And so we marched, and we went right up to the courthouse. And I kept hollering, "Shame on you," real loud. And I know they heard me. And so we made a sign. And the sign said, "In Texas, there is no justice." And we put the picture of the little girl on it. And the sign was 12 by 24, big, 12 feet by 24 feet. And we put it on the side of the highway as you go into Warden. That's a shame. That's a shame. Now, I was just reading just the other day where this man in Dallas killed a dog, and he got 10 years in the penitentiary for killing the dog. And even today, I think one killed a cat, he got 8 years. You get more time for killing an animal than you do for killing a human being? My God, what is that? Oh, my God. I can't understand that, I swear. And we had many incidents like that. That's not the only one. Many of them that happened like that, I addressed. Many of them. I've got a whole bunch of them that happened like that. I went in and I talked to the people, you know, and what's wrong with these people, man? My God. When I first came here, I got my sister, Stella, San Manuel was married to my brother-in-law, William San Manuel. An older lady, a scholarly older lady. She's very knowledgeable of history and genealogy. I do genealogy too, but not as much as she does. But she told me that there was a committee being organized to build a Tejano monument in Austin. And she told me that they had called her, Andres Tejerina, a scholarly gentleman who is a PhD professor of history. I had called her and told her that she wanted her and her husband and me to join that committee to raise money to build a Tejano monument in Austin. And we agreed to join the committee. We didn't know it was going to take 12 years. That was the longest committee I ever served on. And so we decided to go ahead and join. Now, when I had my open house here, I invited a lot of people. That was in '01. And a lot of people came, and I had big barbecue. I had people all over. I didn't even know who they were, but there were a whole lot of them. But I had cooked a lot of briskets. Well, my friends cooked them for me. And so when Mr. Tejerina was here, I gave him a donation of $500. I guess I was acting as if I was rich, But anyway, and he said that was the first donation he had for the monument. And so I didn't know, or none of us knew. We thought it was going to cost $1 million. But it cost $2 million 12 years later. But prices go up every year. So when we started out, we started telling people that we needed money, that we were going to build a Tejano monument. And people were turning a deaf ear. What? What are you saying? Anyway, we were very slow at first. And then in '02, I decided I need to do something to create more awareness so people will know. And I decided perhaps if I ride my horse from here to Austin, I'll create a lot of activity, a lot of awareness, and that would help. So I decided to ride my horse. And this is a picture taken of me when I was going into Austin with my horse. It took me 5 days to get there. And man, was I sore when I got there. But when I got there, I went right up the Capitol, right up to the steps with my horse. And there was a lot of people there and a lot of TV cameras. And it got a lot of attention. That we were, and I had a scroll there that I undid, and I read the scroll to the people, to all the Tejanos, all Texans in Houston, that we're, a committee who is organized to build a statue, a Tejano statue. And so at first, the environmental committee said, well, and I knew we were going to have problems. I knew, because when I did those streets in Houston, like Macario Garcia, Juan Seguin, Cesar Chavez, some of the people that I would go to and ask them to sign the petition for me, they wouldn't sign it. They wouldn't sign it because they were Mexican Americans and they wouldn't sign it. And I knew that we were going to have trouble with the Tejano monument. I already knew beforehand we were going to have a problem. They told us, well, we don't have room for it. I said, we have room for it. We have plenty of room to put it in. And we did. We had plenty of room. They told us, that was the first excuse they gave us. Then they said, well, it was one of the rules that they had that we couldn't do it. So a bill was introduced in the Senate by Mario Gallegos and in the House by Quino Flores to have permission to build the monument. But the one mistake that they made, that they didn't specify where. They should have specified in the front, and they didn't do that. So the bill passed, signed by the governor. Okay, you put your statue, all right, go ahead and do it, put it in the back. Not no, but hell no. It's going to go in the front. That's where it belongs. Another bill, and there goes another 5 years, had to be introduced by Mario Gallegos and a state representative by the name of Martinez. No kin to me, I don't think. Pero todos somos primos. Anyway, they introduced it to put it in the front. Finally, it was approved. And we had permission to build it in the front. And we had a sculpture from Laredo by the name of Hinojosa who built the statue. Beautiful statue. Have you all seen it? If you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. Finally, we broke ground. And there's a shovel that I used. There was about 12 of us. The same 12. I call it the 12 apostles that worked so hard for 12 years. And I'm very proud of every one of this. Every one of these men. I'm proud of them. That they stuck together, they stuck together, and until we finished it. And so in March, I believe it was last year, we had the dedication, and I was just so proud. I was so proud, and so that day it was in March. It was a little chilly, and I'll never forget it because I had been getting a little angina, and sometimes I had to take a nitroglycerin tablet, and so there was a lot of people there, lots and lots of people. Beautiful. They had music, mariachis, conjunto de acordeon. They had all kind of beautiful musicians, and so I reached my pocket to see if I had my nitroglycerin with me. Yeah, sure. And so I looked around, and when they were dedicating, unveiling the statue, I saw some people crying. And there was a lady here, una prima mía, one of my cousins, who, her name was Cabrera, married to one of my primos, who, about 2 years prior to that, she gave us a $100 donation. And she said, Benny, hurry up, because I want to see the statue before I die. Hurry, Benny, hurry, finish it. I'm trying, we're trying. And I want to see if she was sick. Well, the poor girl died, and she didn't see it. But when I was there, and I was looking at the unveiling the statue, all these hundreds of people, and I got cold chills. And I thought about her, and I said, I think she's standing right next to me. I thought she was standing right next to me. And then when I saw those people crying, I remember what my mother told me when I came back from Korea. That morning that I got up, the first morning, I opened up and said, my God, I'm at home. Thank God I'm at home. And so I could smell bacon, I could smell refried beans, tortillas, eggs. Oh my God, Mama was cooking all of this for me. And so I got up, washed up, and I went over, and Mama ran to me and grabbed me, started hugging and kissing me, and just wouldn't turn me loose. And I was trying to grab a tortilla, man, because I hadn't had any in almost 2 years. Mama, please wait till I eat breakfast, and then you can hug me and kiss me. Please wait. And I asked Mama, why are you crying? Why you cried when I left, but why are you crying now? She said, esta vez es por orgullo. This time I'm crying because I'm happy. And I thought about my mother then. And those people, some of them were crying because they were so happy. One of the reasons is because our history has been swept under the rug. It's been swept under the rug. Our history hadn't been told. And a lot of the history that's been told is not true. A lot of the history, not true. It's not true. I made it one of my hobbies when I was in high school to study history. And some people call me a historian. Some people say I'm the LULAC historian, and all people just call me a historian. And maybe I am. Because I studied history back then, and that's what I do every day. I study history. And so I know that a lot of the history that we read is not true. Not true. It's not true. And a lot of it, of course, they wrote the history to make them look good. To make them look good. But I had a man ask me once, so when did your family come here? Like, he was agitated at me. I told him, I bet you $1,000 my family came here before yours. I said, $1,000. And he looked at his wife told him, you better not bet him. 1,000, make it 2. He decided not to. No, he ate crow. That's what you call eating crow. Because I know when my ancestors came here, the only people here wore feathers. They were Indians. So we've been here a long time, baby. We didn't come here yesterday. I think I told you just about everything. It's not everything, but I think that that's about pretty well sums it up. What we're doing. I'm still I'm still very active, even though I'm 80 years old. And so my wife was asking me just the other day, when are you going to retire from LULAC? I told her never. Never. I told her, and when I'm dead, if I know they're mistreating my people, I'm going to get out of my grave and come raise hell with them.
Thank you very much. Can we ask a couple of follow-up questions?
Sure, ask anything you want.
Okay. How old were you when you moved from Goliad to Houston?
How old was I?
Mm-hmm.
I was 69.
69? You were 69 years old when you moved, or it was 9? Okay.
When I moved, yeah.
Okay. Did you see a lot of differences between Goliad and Houston for Mexican Americans?
Oh, yes, my God, yes. Goliad is the town where they killed a lot of Americans. Santana had all these people. We had a lot of battles here at the mission. Not the mission, but the presidio. A presidio is where the soldiers lived, like an army fort. The mission is where the Franciscans lived. The Franciscans, the priests, and what they were doing back then was Christianizing the Indians. Oh yeah, there's a lot of difference. There's a lot of difference now in what it was 10 years ago. There's a lot of difference because we have more elected officials that are Mexican Americans.
Did you have a question? I thought there was something.
I like questions. Go ahead and ask me questions.
Well, should I?
And of course, I was talking to one of the judges the other day. I'm a bailiff in the court. I don't do anything, just say all rise. But sit there and talk to the judge a lot. And I like to listen to those lawyers argue against one another. And so I told the judge that there were 11 members in my family, seven boys, and 4 girls. And we were never indicted for a crime, none of us. And I'm very proud of that, very proud. None of us were ever indicted for a crime, never. The only thing we ever stole here was a watermelon. Watermelon, that's all.
Were your sisters also involved in LULAC, or
Was that
your
a
sisters?
little bit louder?
Your sisters, were they involved?
My sisters, they were all involved except the oldest one, Lupita, the one on the right with the black dress over on the right. She never joined LULAC, but the other ones. Now, right now, there's 2 of them that belong to it. The 2 in the middle, Stella and Mariita, the baby girl. They're members of LULAC here. My 2 daughters are members. I have a daughter in Houston, Loretta, who is very active. She's my indefatigable daughter because she's mover and a shaker. She's involved in a lot of stuff. And I have one in Brownsville who's a registered nurse, and she's also involved in LULAC. They're 4th generations LULAC members, and so they are involved in it. Yeah. Now Loretta has that Cesar Chavez Day parade every year, and I want you all to help this coming year. I want you all to help now. I'm going to look for you. I want to help with the parade. Get the word out. Get people to join, to participate. Cesar Chavez is our Martin Luther King. Any other questions? I like questions. Answer.
Were any of your children involved? Did they get involved in the military?
In what?
In the military? In the military?
Oh, yes. Yes, as a matter of fact, well, I only had 2 girls. I'm glad they didn't have to go. I'm glad they didn't have to go. I know that women go now, but my daughters don't go. Because I think they've been married now for like 30 years, both of them. They're all in their 50s now. They're in their 50s. But they are role model daughters. Role model. And I love them. And they're so good to me. And so I'm good to them too. And so, no, they weren't involved. I hope we don't have to have any more.
Can you tell us a little bit about the street signs? The street signs that you helped?
Well, back around the 70s, sometimes in the 70s, my brother Roy told me one day, Benny, we have to do something to honor Macario Garcia. He's the one that was thrown out of the cafe. We have to honor him. We have to do something. Well, what do you want to do, Roy? Well, he didn't tell me. Well, about 2 years later, he told me the same thing. And we were at the New Year's Eve dance at the, where they used to have the New Year's Eve dance, at the, one of the big auditorium buildings there in Houston. I can't think of the name of it. And Joel Lara was sitting next to us. We were celebrating New Year's Eve. And they said, we need to honor Macario Garcia. Well, what do you want to do? He said, well, let's name a street after him. And so Roy's office was on 69th Street. And he said, well, let's change 69 to Macario Garcia. He said, okay, we'll do it. And Joe Lara, who was the president of LULAC at the time, do you know Joe Lara? He said, Benny, I'm going to put you in charge, so you'll be the chairman of that project. I said, okay. And so it took us 6 months because everybody was involved. When I was telling people, the veterans of foreign war, the American GI Forum, the American Legion, everybody. We made petitions, and everybody, Magnolia Women's Club, everybody was picking petition. And we didn't know at the time, you don't have to pick petition, but only from the people that live on the street. Those and the property owners, not the ones who are renting, the property owners. Those are the ones who have to sign the petition. So man, we got a stack of petitions that high. And so we present them to City Council. We have petitions to change the name of 69 to Macario Garcia. And so it was approved. Ben Reyes was on the City Council at the time. And so they put up the signs. And we have a big parade. We had 6 Medal of Honor recipients. 6. Lucian Adams, Jose Lopez, Roy Benavides, Clarence Saucer. Oh, I can't think the name of them, but we had 6 of them. And we had high school bands. Man, it was a big parade. And after the parade, we went over to, they call it Mexican Park, Hidalgo Park in Magnolia. You know where that's at? Hidalgo Park in Magnolia? Well, we went there and had a big celebration. And then after everybody went home, I had cooked a bunch of briskets in my house. I had a big piece. So I invited all the veterans over there. I had about 50 veterans over there, sitting down, drinking beer and telling all kind of lies. And I had the medal recipients there, the Medal of Honor recipients, we were all at home. So we had a good time, got drunk and had a good time over there. That was such a beautiful celebration. But some of the people told me, no, of course, Anglo people, when I told them, that I said, man, this man's a Medal of Honor recipient, man. Sign it. Nah, I was, all right. Then the next one was Cesar Chavez. And I did this through the Tejano Association for Historical Preservation, of which I was the president at the time. And we decided, by the way, Loretta is the president right now, my daughter. And we decided to name a street after Cesar Chavez. So we picked 67th Street. Wait a minute. Yeah, 67th. I believe that's correct. And we decided to pick that street. Now, that took me 1 year. 1 year. I got all the petitions. I was supposed to have 75% of the property owners. And I had to go look for them because a lot of them didn't live on 69. I mean on 67th. So I had to, and they had almost all of them. And I had 3 people that didn't want to sign my petition. I'll never forget that. And a couple of them were Mexican Americans. I said, man, what's wrong with you, man? You don't like to see your people shine? You don't like to see your people get glory, man? Oh, no, let it stay like it. Oh, I don't want to repeat what I told them. But anyway, it took me a year. And I did it all by myself. I used to walk on Saturdays. About 2 hours every Saturday I'd go and be walking. Now the police stopped me one day. Come here, guy. Me? Yeah, you, come here. I said, we got the report that there's a strange man walking up and down the street. I'm not strange. I've been walking up and down the street almost a year now. So, well, what are you doing? I'm getting a petition to change the name of the street to Cesar Chavez. Oh, okay. They went off and left me. A strange man? I'm not a strange man. I've been on here a long time. Anyway, we celebrated with a parade. And so every March, during Cesar Chavez Day, we celebrate with a parade. And so y'all can help us get some people involved in it. We need to honor him every year. We need to honor that man. Deserves it. Deserves it. And so, and then when I was about to retire, we decided to name one after Juan Seguin. You know who Juan Seguin was? He fought on the side of Texas against Mexico. He fought against his country. Was he a traitor? He fought against his country. Now, after the Korean War, there were 23. They call them turncoats. 23 Americans who decided to go to the communist side. They renounced their American citizenship and they became communists. And they refused to come back to America. They call them turncoats. And I'm proud. Not one of those was a Mexican American. And that's what I told the Senate committee when we went to testify again in the Senate committee. I told them not one of those was a Mexican American. So a Mexican American would rather die than to be a traitor. And a lot of them did in Korea. And I told them I know because I was there. One of the senators, they took a coffee break and he came on. I like what you said. I only spoke the truth. That's all. I spoke the truth. And so we did once again, and we had some trouble. Once again was a Mason. And I went and asked the Masons in Pasadena because the street that we name is 225 that goes directly to the San Jacinto Monument. Have you seen it? Directly. That's once again. And the Masons in Pasadena refused to sign it, my petition. I said, well, he was a Mason like you are. And he refused. He started naming, how about Bowie and Travis and Crockett? Well, they already had schools named after them. They had schools. And so we finally got, even the city council in Pasadena, they decided not to support us. And I went and asked them. But what happened once again, that he did fight here, he fought at the Alamo, and then after the war, guess what happened to him? The same thing that happened to most Mexicans that lived here. They took their land away from him and ran him off. They ran him off. Even though he fought for the side of Texas, he went to Mexico. That's what happened to Juan Seguin. What I was saying about schools, I left something out real important to you. That this happened in, must have been like, in the 90s sometimes. But I was going down Market Street in Denver Harbor. You know Denver Harbor? And I noticed they were breaking ground. I said, my God, I wonder what they're going to build. So I stopped and there were some construction workers there, Mexicanos. I asked them, what are you all doing? He said, we're going to build a school. A school. And I told them, I'm going to name it after my brother. And one of them said, yeah, right. And they started laughing, you know. Well, I did. But it wasn't easy. When they finished the school, I went to introduce because they were asking to people submit names, submit names that you thought would be worthy of having a school name after. And so I submitted Roy's name, and I submitted his name, and I wrote his autobiography, why I thought he deserved to have the school name after. So when they asked us to go present the reason why we thought this man deserved that honor, and I was there and I listened to all the other people who presented their reason for wanting the school name of a certain person. And when they finished, I said, oh no, no way, none of those names, no, they don't even equal to what my brother has done. Never. My brother's the best candidate. So they had picked 23 or 22 community leaders, and I don't know why they didn't pick my name, because I was an election judge. They didn't pick my name. I said, well, that's okay. But I had some friends that were committee members, and I had some that I didn't know. So it finally, they kept deleting names, so it dwindled down to only two names, Raul Martinez and Dimba Harbor. Those are the two names it dwindled down to. And by that time I was getting frustrated, I was getting angry with that committee. So they had a big meeting, had a lot of people there. And I went to it. And I got up to talk. And I told the committee, what's wrong with you people? What's your problem with having a Mexican-American school here in Denver Harbor? We have 4 schools. 4 schools. They all have Anglo names. The community is 95% Hispanic. What's wrong with you? You have a beautiful role model. You're going to pass up this opportunity. The children don't need neighborhoods named after school. They need role models because they need to see, if that man did well, I can do well. Role models is what they need. What's wrong with you? You're going to pass up this beautiful opportunity to have this man who has done so much for his country, for his community here. He's been active in civic affairs for more than 50 years. And so this lady got up. Well, we have to be very careful who we name a school after. And I was ready for that. I was ready for it. I said, ma'am, don't you know that you name a whole lot of schools after slave owners? You don't know that? And some of the black people that were there, they said, I know that's right. You know how they use that expression? I know that's right. And I turned around and walked. I was in tears when I walked. I was mad at them damn people. But it was this. The thing that has got us in trouble for years is the color of your skin. That's what it was. I know. Even Roy was white complected. It's supposed to help. Pero como quiera, anyway, I walked out of there and I said, I'm going to talk to God. And I asked God, what should I do? My brother deserves this honor. And I decided, I guess God must have told me, I'm going to get every election judge I know to sign a petition for me. Election judges have got power. That's the reason they get free donuts. On election day, these are nonpartisan, There's free donuts for a certain candidate. I know because I'm still one here. I've been an election judge for 40 years now. And so I went and I wrote out a petition. And I think there was about 20 of them. Martinez, oh, sure. I'll sign for Martinez. And a bunch of Mexicanos that were election judges. And so I sent each one of the school board members a letter, petition signed, and the school superintendent, I sent him one too. Well, about 3 days later, I was at work, and I got a call. I said, Benny, it's for your brothers, unanimous. I almost had a heart attack. Oh my God, I was so happy. Oh my God, here's the school. Raul Martinez Elementary. I was so happy. Oh my God. I even had to go to the hospital. I almost had a heart attack. Oh, they had to put me in an emergency room, give me an IV. And then a few years ago, I got a call from Sylvia Garcia. And I used to help her all this. She was my good friend. I helped her every time she ran for office or whatever. Even now that she was elected senator, I went over to Houston and helped her, gave her a donation. And she told me, Benny, we're building a courthouse annex where Raul Martinez's office used to be on 69th Street. Have you seen it? And we want to name it after your brother. Oh my God, that would be so nice. They said, we want permission. You got it. And so we want to name it Raul C. Martinez. And so I told the rest of the family, and everybody was real happy. So they did name a courthouse annex after him. I don't think I have a picture of that. But anyway, it was, that put the icing on the cake. And so we were so happy about that. Any more questions?
Were you involved with the Viva Kennedy clubs?
Oh, absolutely. This happened in 1963. It was sometimes in October, I think. We knew the president was coming to Houston. And so we wrote him a letter inviting him to our banquet. We were going to have a banquet at the Rice Hotel honoring Joe Garza, who was a state director. And so we didn't know for sure. But they acknowledged our letter that he was coming. And so we kept dialogue with him. We kept communicating with him. And then that night, I believe it was on the 22nd. He got killed on the 22nd? Mm-hmm. Okay, on the 20th, we had this banquet at the Crystal Ballroom. And so my wife and I decided to go there early because we had to see that everything was in order, decorations. And so we got there about an hour, 2 hours earlier. And Helen looked so beautiful that night. She had on a white dress, a beautiful girl, beautiful. And so must have been around 8 o'clock, the president walked in. The crowd went wild. And I tell you what, there was so many people in there, you almost have to wait for somebody to exhale in order to be able to inhale. And I knew that the fire marshal was going to probably throw everybody out if he came in. That was jam-packed. And when he walked in, they all started screaming, "Viva Kennedy, Viva Kennedy, Viva Kennedy." And they went, wow. And so he walked in with the Secret Service man and about 6 policemen from Houston. And Roy was a sergeant there. So Roy walked in too, and they were guarding the president. And so he came in, and shaking hands. I didn't get to shake his hand because I wasn't that close to him. So he took the podium, and first, Miss Kennedy spoke in Spanish. And so there was one word that she had a little trouble pronouncing, but she had a little trouble with her Spanish, but she got her point across. She said, "I'm glad to be amongst you Texans, the state that was formed 100 years before the state of Massachusetts, where my husband was formed." And then Kennedy spoke, said he was glad to be with us. He had good working relations with South American countries and with Mexico. Just briefly. And where Helen and I were sitting, I had a good view of the president. And they had mariachis, well, a trio. It was a trio. And he told the trio to play the same song again they had played when he came in, so they played it again. And then they had some flamenco dancers. And these flamenco dancers, when they dance, they stomp on the floor. So the president was leaning over talking to Lyndon Johnson, and when they started dancing, they jump up, and boom, they stomp on the floor, and the president went like that. Like if somebody had tried to shoot him, And I told myself, maybe he's got a premonition. He's like somebody had fired a shot. It sounded like a shot. And I told Helen, look at him, he's scared. I'll never forget that. Then, of course, he went on to the Albert Thomas Convention Center. They were having a banquet for Congressman Albert Thomas, who was real nice, with us. And so from there, they went on to Fort Worth. They had a breakfast over there, and then they went to Dallas. That's where they shot and killed him. Next day, you could see people crying. They were crying. I know when I saw Roy, he had tears coming down his eyes. Roy had tears rolling down his eyes. That was so sad. That was one of the darkest hours in our country. And we're going to be there. I'm going to be there to commemorate a couple of weeks from now. That LULAC 60 is planning a big shindig over there. Yeah. That's what happened.
Do you have anything else?
No.
Well, thank you very much for sitting for this interview. And that's all that we have.
If you want to know anything that I might help you with, I'll be glad to help you with whatever I can. Now I got a bunch of books there that you can have, and there's some real good magazines there that you can get a lot of history out of those. Because every one of those magazines talks about some individual in Houston. They're very, very educational. And I also have a book there. If you want to look at it, I'll show it to you. That's there. But I have had a very rich life. I had some wonderful things happen to me, and some that were not so wonderful. And I've been asked before, every person has a supreme moment. A supreme moment, something that happened to you that you consider probably the best moment of your life. And I've been asked which one was mine. I had so many good things happen to me, I can't decide which one it was. Was it my mother hugging me when I got home and kissing me, or my honeymoon with Helen when we got married? Or was it other things that I did? I delivered a baby in the back seat of a car by myself, a little girl. Or I pulled out a baby out of a storm sewer there in Denver Harbor who fell into a storm sewer. I thought that was things like that you consider something that's real nice that happened to you. I don't know which one is my supreme moment. But like I say, my life has been a wonderful life. That I've done a lot of things that I had when we got permission to put the monument in the front of the Capitol, it came out in the paper. And the advocate from Victoria called me about it. I said, I'm walking on air. We're going to put it in the front. And then it came out in the Houston Chronicle. And I had a young man call me from over there. And he told me, Mr. Martinez, you don't know who I am. You probably don't remember me. But he said, my name is Alec Borrego. He said, I read about you in the Chronicle where they're going to put the statue in the front. I said, yeah. He said, well, you gave me a scholarship. What? He said, you gave me a scholarship. When? Now get this. In 1955. I said, I gave you a scholarship? Yeah. Yeah, I said, I went to the clubhouse. It was in December, I said, and you presented me with a scholarship. My God, 1955. And the reason I remember his name, because it's such an odd name. Borrego. He's the only one I know by that name, Borrego. And I said, yeah, I remember your name. I remember your name. And so he said, you gave me a scholarship. What we used to do, when we presented our scholarships, it was usually around Christmas, And then we presented some more again around June or July. And I said, how much was it for? He said, $250. Back then, it was a lot of money. And so we would call the students into the clubhouse, and then we took turns. One member would give one, another member, And Benny, you give this one. And John, you give this one. So when it came to his name, they gave it to me, and I gave it to him. But I'll never forget that. I said, my God, have I been doing that this long? I'm going to show you some pictures that I got there. Do you have any other questions?
No, that's all that we have. This was really great.
Really interesting.
Well, if there's anything about LULAC that I can help you with, I'll be glad to help you because the history is rich, rich, rich history. We had, in Corpus, we got 3 brothers that were national presidents. There they are right there. The Bonilla brothers. They were all national presidents. Tony, Reuben, and William Bonilla. They were all national presidents. In Houston, we had John J. Herrera, attorney. We had Alfred Hernandez. Who else? My mind's going out on me. I can't remember the rest of them, but I believe we have maybe 3 of them from Houston who served as national president. You know, that takes a lot of work. You have a lot, you have a big responsibility. And I mean, right now I'm district director here, and that's also, I get a lot of calls. I get a lot of calls. We had an incident that happened in Port Lavaca about 8 years ago. And these people were very, very angry because a little boy by the name of, I can't think of his name right now, was whipped by the, he was whipped by the principal and the assistant principal. And they left his butt black. Black. And he couldn't sit down. His mother told him, sit down so you can eat your supper. He said, I can't sit down, Mom. And so I got the call. And so I wrote there's a letter that I wrote, a press release that I was going to go and conduct an inquiry as to what had happened out there. So when I got there, there was about 50 people outside, parents. And I went, and then this reporter came up to me. She didn't say hello, anything. She said, we have to have discipline. I said, aren't you being presumptuous? You're being presumptuous. You don't even know what happened. You know what happened? No, I don't. And I tell you what, I believe in discipline just as much as anybody. Because my daddy was a disciplinarian. And when he called us, we jumped. We didn't even ask how far, we jumped. But there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And what these people did was wrong. And I want to tell you that I'm very upset over it. We're not going to tolerate this. So we went into a closed session, the school board, and I and the little boy and the mother. And I told him, I said, I'm going to tell you what the law says. That corporal punishment is okay, but it's got to be reasonable and not excessive. And this was neither one. And I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to follow on you. You, every one of you is responsible. If you're walking down the street here and you see abuse, any kind of abuse, and you don't report it, you're liable. And every one of you are liable. Boy, they were scared. They went like that. And I'm going to follow on all of you. And the mother is already talking to a lawyer. I'm going to file with the U.S. Department of Justice. I'm going to file with the Equal Opportunity Commission. And everybody I can. Boy, they were glad when I got out of there. They were glad. But that's what happened over there. That's not right. Sure, I believe in capital punishment, but that's the right way to do it. And I think that if you're going to spank somebody, you got to feel it. Otherwise, don't even do it. If you're going to, now, make it burn a little bit, but not leave a damn bruise on people like you're whipping a horse. No, you don't do that. You don't do that. And that's one thing that happened over there. Another thing that happened, I got a call from I don't know who it was, Silvia Garcia or Berta Orteaga. They keep dialogue with me all the time. They belong to the Houston LULAC over there. That some lady called her from Il Bernard, and she had 2 illegal children. They were illegal, and she took them to school, and they refused to admit them because they were illegal. So I said, well, he says, give me the telephone so I can call them. So she gave me the telephone, and I called. I talked to the superintendent, the supervisor, the principal, and I told him, I said, about the children. I said, you got to admit them. I said, who says so? I said, LULAC. I don't care what LULAC says. And I told him, have you ever heard of Pyler versus Doe? Pyler? P-Y-L-E-R, P-Y-L-E-R, Pyler. You ever heard of Pyler? No, I haven't. Well, you better find out. And you will care when I file on you in the morning. You better talk to your lawyer. And I hung up the phone on it. And I was getting ready to file. And I believe her name was Garcia. Yeah. Mr. Martinez, you don't have to worry. She called me by 9 o'clock. You don't have to worry anymore. They already admitted them. And I want to show you the picture of the little children. Here's their picture. They refuse to admit them. They're doing well. Precious little. I went over there because they told me they wanted to meet me. So I said, well, on the way back from Houston, I'll swing by East Bernard. There's a letter there that was written to me by a little girl named Claudia Ponteo. I'm going to let you read it in a minute. But this happened in Denver Harbor in 89. 89. We had just, my wife and I, this is my second wife. We had just gotten married. And we were trying to, I wanted her to come live with me. That did have a nice house, even though it was an old house in Denver Harbor. It had central heat, wood burning, it was a real nice old house. And of course, she lived over there in Wood Forest. We couldn't decide where we were going to live. Well, she lost her husband. She's a widow, and I was a widower. And I went over to Denver Harbor to check on my house because I needed a water heater, and it was real cold, freezing, Christmas Day. And when I was driving down the street, I saw these people standing outside crying. They were crying. And I knew them. And I stopped, and then I saw the house was burned. I said, what happened? I said, our house burned this morning. I said, burns? Yeah, I said, probably was skyrockets that the children were throwing Christmas, and it probably started the fire, and they were crying. It was cold, and the neighbors had given them some blankets, and they were in pajamas. So I said, well, get in your truck and follow me. I'm going over to my house. Follow me. So I took them over to my house, and they came in. I turned on the central heat. I had central air heat. And I said, well, do you have a place to stay? No. I said, well, you can stay here. Stay in my house. We'll talk about the rent later on. The only thing I don't have is a water heater, but I'm going to install one in right now. So that's probably one of the nicest things I've done many nice things with people, but I help people all my life. All my life I've been helping. But I don't forget that because I got that letter from that little girl. Her name is Claudia. And she's a PhD now. When she wrote that letter, she was valedictorian. And smart little girl. So what do you girls do when your daddy sends you to college and when you come out of college and you get a good job, you marry Anglo boys. That's what my daughters did. I don't know. It's okay. That's all right. But she did. She's married to an Anglo boy. She wrote that letter to me. I'm going to show it to you in a minute. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay.
Because I'm getting hungry.
Well, thank you.